Great to see so many faces. Wow. If you know how to use the chat, that's a function you're familiar with, maybe feel free to go ahead and say hellos, shout out where you're from. I think it's always great to see who we have with us and where they're joining from.
Just admitting a few more folks. Looks like we're up to 37 people here.
Great.
People keep joining, so we'll give a few more minutes.
Great. We have people from Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, Virginia, Maryland, North Carolina. We've got Big Laurel being represented. We got Jackson, Kentucky. People from all over the place, in and outside of Appalachia. I will say, I am sad we are not in person, but it has been really cool to see people joining us from far and wide, all over Appalachia and beyond. So I think that is a very cool thing and a great way to celebrate 50 years. I think we can go ahead and get started. It's 4 after, and people may continue to join us, which is great. So just wanted to begin, I'd like to introduce myself. If you don't know me, my name is Ed Sloane. I am the chair of CCA's board. I'm coming to you from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania now, born and raised in West Virginia, which will always be home to me. So it's great to be with you all for our 50th anniversary. Sarah's going to introduce herself in a moment. And then we'll be also hearing from Michael and Jeannie, but just to introduce myself, I also work at Villanova University in the campus ministry program. I coordinate service and cultural immersion trips, many of them to some of CCA's partners, such as Bethlehem Farm, Emmaus Farm, Appalachian Catholic Worker. So I always spread the West Virginia and Appalachia love wherever I go. I'd like to start us off with just a couple quick tech notes, okay? So some of these might be things that you already know and might sound fairly elementary, but these are some things for folks who might be a little bit newer to the Zoom platform, which is the primary way we're going to be together for our annual gathering this year. So as you enter a session, you probably notice you'll be placed in a waiting room. We're going to do that for every session. Just that allows the speakers, the panelists, to get themselves ready and prepared. So just hang tight and we'll promptly admit you at the start time, whether we're ready or not, we're gonna bring you on in, okay? So we will have somebody who's communicating with the waiting room just to let you know, but if for some reason you're not hearing from folks, just hang tight and you'll be admitted promptly. Just as a reminder, all the sessions will be recorded, and shortly after the sessions end, we're going to make those recordings available on the Whova application. So again, just as a reminder that you are being recorded. You will, however, be on mute, and we're going to lock the mute function for most of our sessions. And if there's certain moments where we're inviting dialogue or conversation, we'll go ahead and manually unmute that. But we're just going to ask that folks remain muted. We have a lot of folks joining us this year. It's actually, in fact, it's CCA's largest annual gathering. This is the most we've ever had. So 50 years and CCA is still going strong with close to 140 people joining us this year, which I think is an amazing way to start the next 50 years. So with that in mind, we're just going to ask folks to remain on mute. But if there's an occasion to unmute you, we'll help out with that feature. As I mentioned, as you join a session, your video will also be turned on. But if you'd like to turn your video off for any reason, if you go to the bottom of your screen, if you're looking at a laptop or a desktop computer, and I believe it's at the top of your screen if you're looking at a mobile application, you'll see a video camera logo under which says stop video. You can go ahead and click that if you want to practice that. Go ahead. If you're unfamiliar with how to do it, you can try it out. You don't have to, though. I notice some of you are sitting at a bit of a distance from your devices. Then if you click it again, excuse me, if you click it again, your video will come back on. So if at some point you need to turn your video off, feel free to do that. At certain points, we may ask you to turn your video off. For example, if you're watching a movie or something like that, we might invite you to turn your video off. And so that's how you do that. Also in that toolbar, whether it's at the bottom or top of your screen, you'll see a chat function. If you click on that, a chat window will appear. If you're looking at a computer on the right side of your screen, that's the best way to communicate with each other and also communicate if you're having any technological problems or if you're observing a technological problem that we don't seem to notice. So you can go ahead, most of us have already used that. Just above where you type your message, and once you've typed a message, after you do that, you need to click your enter or return button on your computer. I know that might be confusing for some people. But just above where it says type message here, you'll see where it's directing your message. So right now it says to everyone. If you click that, you can go ahead and send a private message to somebody. For this session, Michael is going to help out with any tech problems that you're having. So you can always send Michael a private message, and he can help you kind of on the back end and work with things. He can go ahead and send you, he can give you a phone call as well if he needs to step away and help you troubleshoot something in more depth. But if you're having problems or you're noticing a problem, we'll ask you to alert Michael, in this case, Michael, or it'll be Sarah or I, and one of us will help walk you through it. So we're basically just doing that so people don't interrupt the sessions. I'm sure all of us have been on Zoom calls by now where somebody's accidentally on mute and everybody else starts to chime in and says, you're on mute, you're on mute. Well, we want to kind of try to prevent that so that none of our sessions get interrupted or derailed. So if somebody's talking and they're on mute, just go ahead and send a message in the chat and one of us will unmute them. I'd like to say a real quick word on how watching videos will work, and then a couple other things, and I'm going to turn it over to Sarah. So if we're asking you to watch a video, one of us will share a link to that video in the chat bar. So we'll prompt you, we'll let you know that it's been posted. You'll just go ahead and click on that button when the time comes, or that link when the time comes, and turn your video off while you're watching the film. Go ahead and we'll be doing this in a second. Sarah will give a little more detailed instructions, but go ahead and watch it. Once you've completed it, so your video's off while you're watching it. To let us know you've finished watching, you just go ahead and turn your video back on. Then we'll know that you're rejoining us, that you've completed watching it. If you're having trouble accessing, if the link's not working for you or you're confused about how to handle that, again, just utilize the chat function. One of us will help you through that. The one other thing in terms of, kind of our time together is just to remind us to enter into each session with an attitude of respectfulness. I think all of us are here to learn. We're here to celebrate the amazing work that's being done in Appalachia. So we ask everybody just to come to each session with an open mind, be willing to learn, to recognize that all of us are learners and we're all in different places in our journeys and in our learning. And we do ask that we make sure our comments aren't intentionally hurtful or intended to put somebody or some group down, right? That we all enter into this with a spirit of respect, with recognition of the dignity of everybody who is gathered and for those who may not be gathered as well. Can we just get everybody to offer a thumbs up to consent to those ground rules of respectfulness? Great. That's wonderful. So let me make sure I've covered all of the things. I do have a couple more things to say before I turn it over. A couple more quick points. So our theme this year is be the church you want to see in the world. I think the reason that we chose that is we were talking and thinking about the People's Pastoral, the Telling Takes Us Home. And in that we talk about the magisterium of the people, right? That our own experiences, our own voice, the authority of the Spirit present in each of our lives, in each of our experiences, in each of our places, is alive and active and gives our voices a unique authority. So we don't need to wait for anybody's permission to create the type of church we want to see here in the world today, to create the Appalachia we want to see here in the world today. The invitation to each of us is to be the church we want to see in the world, to create the church from the grassroots, rather than wait for permission for the church we want to see. We always say, I wish the church was like this, or I wish the church was like that, or I wish Appalachia was like this, or I wish Appalachia was like that. Well, let's go out and do it together. That's what we're gathered here for. We're gathered here to find our people, to find our church, and to be that church together and learn what it takes to be that church together. In the People's Pastoral, we lift up the voices of various communities in Appalachia, people of color, LGBTQ people, workers, women, the earth herself, right? And so we wanted to lift up those various voices, to hear from those voices as we celebrate 50 years, to acknowledge all the work that has been done, all the work that's being done, all the work that we need to do. So we've got a variety of sessions on a variety of topics. If it feels like the sessions and the workshops are all over the place, that's because there's so much good happening in Appalachia, in the church in Appalachia, and we wanted to lift up as much of it as possible. I also wanted to share a few words about our keynote speakers, Bill McKibben and Ched Myers. Both of them take an activist and grassroots approach to their work. You may have heard of Bill McKibben's work in environmental activism and 350.org, which is an organization that works on environmental justice activism, particularly around divestment. Ched Myers also works at bringing a similar perspective to how we understand our faith, being disciples, not only of Christ, but disciples of our watersheds, right? And Pope Francis reminds us that the work of the political, the work of the natural world, the political world, socioeconomic world, all these things are intertwined. And so we saw a resonance in their work with CCA's own grassroots commitments, and CCA's commitments to the magisterium of the poor and the magisterium of earth. So we've asked them to share their wisdom with us as well. A few quick thank yous before I pass it over to Sarah. First of all, to thank our co-coordinators, Michael and Jeannie, who are total rock stars and who I can attest put in many long hours, not only planning this annual gathering, but coordinating all of the amazing work that is happening in the church in Appalachia. They make sure that we can find and see each other like we're finding and seeing each other now. Even in the midst of a pandemic, they're bringing us together. They're helping coordinate the many exciting ministries that all of us do, and helping us to be the church that we wish to see in the world. I was explaining to some of my students the other day that I think a coordinator is a person who empowers the leadership of others. A coordinator helps everybody see the goal and make sure everybody continues to move toward the goal. And I can't think of two people like Michael and Jeannie who embody that spirit more. So just want to give a huge thanks to the work that they do to help us do this work. And finally, I want to thank the annual gathering planning committee, who's been made up of folks from the West Virginia state chapter. There have been a lot of people who have come together and put a lot of hard work into coordinating these sessions that you're going to experience over the next several weeks and this weekend. They've weathered a pandemic and figured out how to bring these experiences online. We've had a lot of different folks working from across the state of West Virginia and beyond to make this a reality. So I want to give a big shout out as well to the planning committee. I've been talking enough, as I tend to do, so I'm going to stop doing that and turn it over to Sarah.
Thank you, Ed. As Ed said, my name is Sarah George, and I have the pleasure of serving as the vice chair as well as the secretary of the board for Catholic Committee of Appalachia. My day job, if you will, is that I'm the founder and executive director of Emmaus Farm here in Vanceburg, Kentucky, which used to be the Glenmary Farm, which is a tradition that I'm proud to uphold. And it seems like we've got several Glenmarians on this call and joining us throughout the gatherings. That makes me very excited. I got involved in CCA a few years ago, and I restarted this farm here in Kentucky, and it has been a really important part of my work as well as my spirituality, and learning from all of you and the work that's happening for justice for the mountains and in the foothills here in northeastern Kentucky has been very important to me. So I'm grateful to all of you for your membership and your example. I've got a few announcements to share with all of you before we transition into the business meeting. First, some really excellent news. CCA is thrilled and humbled to announce that we have received an incredibly generous donation of $5,000 from Sister Loretta Spatilla and her siblings, James, Margaret, John, and Sherry. This amazing gift was given to CCA in memory of Father John Rausch, who passed away earlier this year, for educational purposes, and the board has already directed that donation be put into a restricted fund as we brainstorm and discern how best to utilize that donation to its full potential. The Spatilla family invites you to consider adding to this fund to keep Father John Rausch's memory alive and his work here in Appalachia, to remember that and honor that. So huge thank you to the Spatilla family for that generous donation, and if you're interested in contributing to that restricted fund for those purposes, please contact us. We're happy to help you with that. So we're very honored and grateful for that generous donation. CCA has also received an exciting invitation from Sister Simone Campbell with Nuns on the Bus to join them this year in their virtual tour online, their virtual bus tour, if you will. They are asking for those of you in Appalachia to send them a short 2 to 3 minute video letting them know how the Trump administration's policies have affected you and Appalachia on the ground and what policies are really needed in this region. You are our voice, so please send your video to the address on Network's website. If you need help finding that, please contact us. We're happy to help with that, but if you check out Network's website, that's where you can find where to send a 2 to 3 minute video about the current Trump administration's effects on Appalachia. So feel free to take advantage of this great opportunity to let CCA's voice echo what Nuns on the Bus are doing. Finally, we want to thank once again our sponsors who have made possible this first ever online annual gathering. Without them, we would not have been able to celebrate our 50th anniversary in any real meaningful way. So huge thank you to the Glen Mary Home Missioners, the Federation of Communities in Service, Big Laurel Learning Center, Sisters of the Presentation, Coalition for Appalachian Ministries, and many, many generous individual donors. We're very grateful for your support. Next, we have a limited number of t-shirts with this year's theme and logo, Be the Church You Wish to See in the World, as well as the dandelion. I'm wearing one of those shirts now. We have a few left that are black. They're a black v-neck with a white logo on them. And in celebration of CCA's 50th anniversary, we are giving several of those away for free. So if you are interested in winning one of those shirts, and you are not currently a CCA member, if you join tonight on CCA's website, you will be given a shirt for free that you can have in time to wear for the session starting in a couple of weeks. And if we still have some left over, then we will find other ways to give those out to people throughout the gathering. But make sure that if you're not a current CCA member, please join us. We are looking forward to that. Those shirts, by the way, are made in the USA, and they are printed by SUSU, one of our grassroots group collaborators, promoting economic sustainability in Appalachia. So we look forward to giving those out to you. That's all the announcements that I have for you. Next, we're going to kind of shift gears into the business meeting.
Dear friends of the Catholic Committee of Appalachia, welcome to our annual gathering. The pandemic has certainly made it hard to do things in our normal ways, and as much as we would love to gather in person and celebrate this great event, this great milestone, this moment in our history, we're fortunate to have an opportunity to gather in an electronic way, in a virtual way. It's not a bad method for telling stories, and as members of the Catholic Committee of Appalachia know, it is the telling that takes us home. From our own homes this time, we gather to share those stories, to be challenged in our thoughts and in our vision, to work for a better Appalachian region, and to see the seeds and nurture the seeds of the kingdom of God already growing here in this Appalachian region. This is a special year as we celebrate our 50th anniversary. It's a special time to look back at what has been accomplished, to take hold of the present moment, especially as so many issues are in front of us right now in an election year, in the midst of a global pandemic, when our society is confronting the racism that is so built into our American culture. There's so many more opportunities for grace, growth, and conversion. That is to say, so many challenges at this time. I'm happy to be joining you through this 50th anniversary gathering, happy to participate in what this organization has been able to accomplish. I'm grateful for all that you give to the organization and glad that we can at least gather in this way. As we look forward to what the Lord has in store for us in the future, we know that we can't plan or that our plans come to nothing, but we can certainly share the vision of the prophets, share the vision of those holy people who recognize God constantly in our midst, and we can be that living and loving presence to each other. Let's enjoy this time together. Let's continue to grow as we learn about our culture, our region, and what God is saying to us at this moment. Let's be grateful to the leadership of the organization that has put this together, and thank God for the blessings of these 50 years and the many people who have made the Appalachian region a part of their journey of faith. Have a wonderful time. I look forward to seeing all of you. God bless.
Welcome to the 50th anniversary annual gathering with the theme, Be the Church You Wish to See in the World. We are so glad you joined us. We're coming to you from the Appalachian Catholic Worker in Spencer, West Virginia, which is also the home office for Catholic Committee of Appalachia. It's been a difficult year, but despite a global pandemic and all the obstacles keeping us from coming face to face, even as one who tries to live the simple life, it sure is nice for me to have technology help us come home to each other. This year, we have more states represented than ever before. People are zooming in from all over. So let's see where everyone is tuning in from. If we don't mention you, let me know and we'll announce your state later in the conference. Starting in the Northeast and working our way down out west, we have, drum roll please, New York, Connecticut, Pennsylvania, Ohio, West Virginia, Maryland, Virginia, Kentucky, Tennessee, North Carolina, Florida, and Carol Warren all the way from California. Hi, Carol. All in all, we'll have about 80 people participating in the conference this year and more speakers than we've ever had before. So if you're able, we hope you'll take advantage of Zoom's features to connect and reconnect with others from around the country. Now to introduce CCA, especially for those of you who haven't joined us before. Our mission statement gives you the gist of what we're about, and we rely heavily on members to spread the word about the organization. So this should be good practice for you. The Catholic Committee of Appalachia is a grassroots, faith-based network raising a prophetic voice of justice for Appalachia and her people. When you're introducing people to CCA for the first time, it's good to be able to describe it quickly to pique their interest right away. So be sure to cover who is CCA, what all we do, and how we do it. But with 50 years under our belt, we can't help having in the back of our minds those who went before us to bring us to where we are today. So we want to take a moment to honor the memory of those who left us most recently. 5 members so far this year. It's quite a hit for CCA. And these 5 spent decades in the region, so the impact of their loss has been pretty profound. As for those leading the way today, Ed Sloane is our chair of the board, Sarah George is pulling double duty as vice chair and secretary. Jerry Hart helps with finances as our treasurer. And we have Jerry, Joan, and Vincent as members at large. Our bylaws say the board should be comprised of representatives from the states in central Appalachia. So that includes places like the old steel towns of southern Ohio and southwest Pennsylvania, the coal fields of West Virginia, eastern Kentucky, and southwestern Virginia, and the mountains of eastern Tennessee and western North Carolina. As you can see, we have room for 2 more board members. So if you reside in either Tennessee or Ohio and would like to join this stellar team, be sure to let us know. We're always looking to maintain a board with broad diversity in order to best represent the people we serve. If there's not representation of a certain population, we have our ear to the ground even more with that particular group of people to try to be aware of what their needs are and what issues concern them, because it's the membership and their concerns that are at the center of CCA. Rather than a hierarchical organization with the board and staff at the top, our members are our focus. They are the heart, and their concerns are at the core of what we do. In other words, we take our lead from all of you. That's why, with the explosion of national attention on the issue of racism this year, sparked by the killing of George Floyd, the board thought back to how members from Virginia State Chapter tried to raise our consciousness on the issue 2 years ago. They hosted an entire annual gathering to address racism and white supremacy in Appalachia. And it was so impressive and profound that we made several promises as individuals and as an organization to continue learning about and speaking out on the issue. But to be honest, we went on to other things after the gathering. It's sad that it's taken yet this, another wake-up call, for us to start to follow through on those promises. But we are starting. At this point, we can't afford not to. Racism is an issue that intersects with every single other issue CCA addresses. In fact, it's at the root of all our issues here, and we need to learn more and to speak out about it more in every facet of what we do. So we are in the midst of forming a new task force to help the board incorporate anti-racist strategies into CCA's structure. And we need your help. Throughout the conference, while hearing from our speakers, if you feel led to join this task force, please don't hesitate to contact us. Our goal is to have a committee formed and have a conference call before the end of the year, with our first task being to collaborate with Bill Turner and Ron Carson from the Appalachian African American Cultural Center. We'll assist them in charting a map of the Black Catholic churches in the region, as we promised to start doing 2 years ago. Okay, moving on to finances. CCA's income comes from a number of sources listed here. We have definitely taken a hit due to the pandemic, but thankfully, we're doing far better than other organizations overall. Grants are up this year by about $3,000, but funding from other sources has stayed about the same or dropped. The income we receive pays mainly for these 3 expenses. One good thing is that our costs have declined because of COVID, so our loss of income hasn't devastated us. We're spending about as much as we're bringing in. So by the end of December, if we can break even, we will have been successful. This year, we've had a budget of $55,000, down about $20,000 from last year, which is a big drop. But like I said, without expensive programs or as many operational costs, we've been able to hold our own. Finally, we have about $65,000 in the bank, which is about a full year's worth of a nest egg. So if we can keep living within our means for the remainder of 2020, which is the key to living sustainably anyway, we'll be in good shape. Then we just keep our fingers crossed and pray that the effects of the pandemic don't drag on for more than another year. Thanks to all of you for such support in these difficult and really uncertain times. Truly, CCA's work wouldn't survive without you. Next, Michael will talk about CCA's programs and projects.
Hi there, everybody. As Jeannie said, it's been quite a year. It's been a tough year. But it's also been, we think, a year of Sabbath renewal and of rethinking CCA's priorities. Also of learning new skills for a new age. So here are some updates along those lines. Keeping our 3 pastoral letters in print and available is a major part of CCA's work and mission, so that we can continue to promulgate them, in other words. We're still working on our plan of republishing the 3 pastorals in 1 volume, as we announced last year at this time, with some additional essays and commentary from CCA members. Our hope is that we can find an interested publisher to make the pastorals more widely available, and so that CCA does not have to bear the expense and the work of printing such a large volume. Getting proposals out to publishers and responses back from them has been quite slow this year, in part due to COVID-19. We did receive 2 reluctant rejections from Catholic theological publishers, both of whom really affirmed the value of the project, but regretted that they would not be able to make it work financially during these difficult times in the publishing world. However, the good news is that we do have an active interest from the University of Kentucky Press, possibly for including the 3 pastoral letters in their Place Matters series. So we think our next step will be to turn to them, the University of Kentucky Press, to see what is possible. Of course, we'll keep you updated on the progress. And in the meantime, all 3 pastoral letters, of course, are always available on our website for free. The Cherokee Retreat. This past March, Mary Herr and John Roush were set to lead their 25th and final Cherokee Retreat before retiring and passing the retreat on to new leadership. John, of course, passed away about 1 month before the retreat, and so Sister Robbie Pentecost stepped in to lead the evening theological reflection sessions in John's place. I was finally able to go on this retreat after wanting to do so for a number of years. And although it was sad not having John there, I was really impressed and really moved, really just blown away by the whole experience. Mary has been working hard to train 2 new facilitators, Liana Costantino and myself, who will carry the retreat into the future, beginning in March 2021, provided COVID allows us to gather at that time. Liana will be taking the part of the main facilitator, and I will be leading the theological reflection sessions each evening, as John did. You can meet Liana in the latest issue of Patch Quilt that was sent out to all members last month. And Liana and Mary Herr will be leading a session about the Cherokee Retreat and decolonization as part of the extended annual gathering workshops, Thursday, October 1st. So check our website and check your Whova app or the Whova website for more information about that. We are excited that the film Magisterium of the People continues to be seen by new audiences in the U.S. and in Canada. And the story of the People's Pastoral is inspiring at least 2 groups, one in New York and one in Canada, to begin the process of discerning whether they should put together their own People's Pastoral letters. Within the last year, Salt and Light Media, who produced the film, released a DVD version, and it includes a really good study guide and booklet. You can order DVDs from the CCA website, give them as gifts to your friends, set up a viewing at your parish or your prayer group that you belong to, and so on. Of course, we'll be screening the film Magisterium of the People as part of CCA's online 50th birthday party on Friday, September 25th at 6 p.m., followed by a panel discussion about the legacy of the 3 pastoral letters with 8 of our CCA wisdom figures. It's quite a lineup. So again, make sure you check your Whova app for details on that. A number of us continue to keep an eye on the abuse crisis in our church, especially as it impacts our Appalachian dioceses. CCA has been a voice of dissatisfaction with the results of the investigation into Michael Bransfield, the former bishop of West Virginia, and we continue to advocate for Bransfield's victims, including those survivors who are still pursuing justice in West Virginia and in Philadelphia. Jeannie and I recently had the opportunity to meet with the new West Virginia Bishop, Mark Brennan, and we were able to share with him the legacy of CCA, the pastoral letters, and so on, as well as our disappointment with the results of the Bransfield Amends Plan and the lack of serious reform efforts in our diocese. We walked away from that meeting unsure of his intentions for having a relationship with CCA, but CCA remains open to future dialogue with Bishop Brennan and with the Diocese of Wheeling-Charleston. And finally, CCA this year has been confronted in a new way, as most of us have, with the reality of racism and with the need to respond in action as individuals and as an organization. In response to the murders of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, the board approved and issued a statement of commitment to anti-racist action this past June. The statement includes an expression of our commitment to enter into a process of rethinking CCA's very structure and priorities so that we include anti-racism at the very heart of what CCA is about. After all, CCA's very existence addresses the reality of a region that has in many ways been racialized in painful ways. So over the next several board meetings, we plan to reflect together on a set of materials provided to us by board member Joan Wages about how we can put anti-racism and decolonization at the center of who CCA is and what CCA does. You can find CCA's statement of commitment to anti-racist action on the CCA website or in the latest issue of Patch Quilt. That's it for updates, so I'll take you back to Jeannie. Thanks.
Through our program called the Apple Project, which allows us to assist regional land trusts, we were gifted with a 65-acre tract of land in Roane County in 2018. This homestead and the little dilapidated house on it was owned by an artist who went by the name of Sacco. Over the past 2 years, we've been awarded over $25,000 in grants and gifts to refurbish the place. And this is where we've gotten thus far. Since the outside was finished, we've been at a bit of a standstill to get the inside done due to COVID. But we'll get going on it again as soon as we can. It's been our goal to meet the challenges set forth in the first pastoral letter to create centers of reflection and prayer. And when it's not in use for retreats or open to marginalized populations for their grassroots efforts, the plan is for it to be available for short-term emergency housing. We will continue to call it Sacco's, 1, because that's how the neighbors in the holler will always refer to it, so why fight it? And 2, because by making it into an acronym, we can acknowledge the first people who inhabited the land. And that's it for the business meeting. But before we end, we'd like to thank a few people. First, thanks to the annual Gathering Planning Committee, comprised of members of West Virginia State Chapter. We want to especially thank board members Ed Sloane and Sarah George for all their incredibly hard work and long hours on the techie end of the conference. Next, we're so grateful to those involuntary volunteers, our families, who support CCA, whether they want to or not, by supporting Michael and me. In the midst of these crazy times of social distancing, it was easy for Jocelyn and Michael to keep a growing secret from the rest of us. Earlier last month, they welcomed another daughter, Cecilia Michaela, into the world. Yay! So, as soon as all the workshops of the gathering come to a close, Michael will finally get a much needed paternity leave. As for me, on my 50th birthday in April, not to detract from CCA's 50th birthday, of course, Bill proposed to me, and we'll be getting married next weekend. Finally, to our volunteer bookkeeper, Sister Jan, who involuntarily has her birthday around CCA's annual gathering every year, we wish you a very happy belated birthday, Sister Jan. Enjoy the conference, everyone.
You know, something that Jeannie lifted up in her address to us all is that CCA is members are at the center. So we want to hear from you all. And typically we would have a dialogue of questions between membership and the board and our co-chair or our co-coordinators. We can't really do that given this platform, but we still want to hear from you all. We want to keep you all at the center of everything that CCA does. So if you have a question, feel free to shoot it out in the chat, and a member of the board or one of the co-coordinators can respond. All right. So we do have a couple questions coming in. I'll kind of let, Sarah, do you want to kind of field or at least lift up the questions, and then whoever from the board or one of the co-coordinators can respond as appropriate?
Sure. Vincent asked what the final count was for this gathering.
Michael might be the best. Michael was watching those numbers come in like a hawk, so he might be the best.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, including all the speakers, which is about 35 people altogether. We are almost to 150 participants total. So it's, yeah, the high 140s. So this is definitely the most that we've had total at an annual gathering in a number of years, if not a couple decades, I think.
There was also a question about the plan for SACOs. Maybe Michael, you could kind of highlight those plans that we have been talking about.
Yeah, the plan for SACOs is really inspired, again, like Jeannie said, by This Land is Home to Me and its vision for centers of prayer and reflection. And you know, that idea of centers of prayer and reflection has been put into practice in a number of ways, whether it's kind of formal diocesan retreat centers. We see a lot of those all over the region. It's also taken the form of more informal gatherings at parish and grassroots groups. SACOs is going to be kind of somewhere in the middle. It's going to be primarily a small retreat center run in cooperation between CCA and the Appalachian Catholic Worker, where Jeannie lives. It'll be available to CCA members and others, but we're going to make a kind of a preferential option for people of color, Indigenous people, women's groups, things like that. First and foremost, to have a kind of an alternative space for gathering, for organizing, for praying, and just being together. When it's not being used for groups like that, it will serve as emergency short-term housing for people that are in need. And that's something, you know, Jeannie with her Catholic worker background is very committed to. So it's going to serve a couple of different functions, but a few months ago, I was able to see some of the latest updates to the house, and I also saw it right when Jeannie acquired that property. So I got a sense of the progress that is being made there, and it's really fascinating to see that land and that little cabin come together, and the ideas that Jeannie has had put into practice. So we're all very excited to see SACOs be finished and to be usable for everybody.
Thanks, Michael. We've had several people ask about the 5 CCA members who have passed away within the last year that were, their photos were highlighted in that video. Ed, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I can say a couple words about that. So this this Sunday we'll be having our liturgy with Bishop Stowe presiding. So at the beginning of that liturgy, our hope is that I believe Jeannie will be doing it, is going to say a few words about the folks that we've lost over the last year, lift up their names, and we'll kind of begin that liturgy holding those folks in prayer and celebrating their legacy and the work that they've given to CCA. I think Jeannie was having some technological issues, so she's not on right now. So we'll kind of wait for when she's able to join us and share a little bit more fully about those folks and lift up a piece of their story as we enter into prayer to close off our weekend.
Were there any more questions about this weekend or how to use the technology that we'll be utilizing? We'll talk again about the schedule for the next coming days before we hop off. But if anyone has any other questions that they'd like to type in the chat box, now would be a good time for us to answer those.
There was one quick, it was technologically related, just about the fact that anytime we share a video with you in the chat link, it will open. It should direct you out of the Zoom application back to your browser. And so a window will open in your browser, for example, if you have Firefox set as your default browser. And so after you've concluded watching the video clip, you'll have to navigate back to your Zoom application to rejoin us here. So apologize if that was confusing.
I see a question from Art Milholland, and it's a question that I think he's posing it to all of us to kind of think about over the weekend. And it's an interesting question. I'd be interested to hear everybody's thoughts on it. He says, I wonder if members could suggest novels that describe Appalachian history, culture, labor, etc., especially in West Virginia, and whether we could kind of compile a list of novels along those lines and then share that with everybody at the end. I think among all of us, there's, a lot of us are familiar with Appalachian fiction and stuff that deals with that. Denise Giardina's novels, for example, most of us are familiar with. I'm trying to think of the best way to kind of collect those. If is there somebody among the membership who you can type your name in the chat box who'd be willing to kind of collect those suggestions for novels? If you put your name and your email address maybe in the chat, we could all make note of that, and that person could kind of create a list if you're willing to do that.
It might be possible too, Michael, to, just as I'm thinking out loud here, create a Google Doc and share a link in the description of this business meeting, and people could continue to come back into this session to the link for this session and just type it in on their own as well, if that isn't too complicated to describe.
Yeah, why don't we, perhaps we could set up a Google Doc link tonight, and then in the morning we get together, we can share that link here in the chat. And then that link would be available to anybody to just go in and to add things that come to mind. That's a great idea, Eddie. Thank you.
And we can share it with membership at the end of, we can share it with membership at the end of the annual gathering. We will explain how to access it. I can see a couple of folks are maybe a little confused about Google Docs. We'll make sure it's really clear how to access that resource so people can add things to it, and then we'll share it at the end as well. So if you never can figure it out, you'll at least receive something at the end of the annual gathering, even if you can't quite figure out how to access it. But we'll explain, we can walk you through. Maybe I can even do a quick screen share and show people how to access it once we create it. Before we sign off, is there any other business type stuff in terms of what's coming forward, Sarah or Michael, that?
I don't think so. Just a reminder about tomorrow morning session at 10 and turning off your camera and coming back at 8 this evening if you'd like.
All right. So feel free to sign off and rejoin us at 8, or you can simply turn your video off and come back and turn your video back on when the time comes. And if you're done for the day, we'll see you in the morning.
Thank you all so much.